Welcome to Transformative Transformational, a TeachBeyond podcast. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're here to explore what it means to be transformed in our own lives and how that overflows to living lives of transformational impact in our communities.
We have shared on the podcast before that Heather and I each served at Black Forest Academy in Germany. Today, our guests are actually some of our former colleagues who are still serving at the school.
Yes, I'm really excited to be talking with Clarence and Anna Yao today. Anna grew up in Ohio in the United States and graduated from Bethel University in Indiana with a degree in math education and a minor in chemistry.
And Clarence grew up in Alberta, Canada, and graduated from Briarcrest College in Saskatchewan, Canada, with a bachelor's degree in Christian ministry.
Clarence and Anna actually met while serving at Black Forest Academy, so we'll talk with them about that today, as well as what it looked like to return overseas with two little boys who are now teenagers.
In this episode, you will hear mention of Jan's team, which was the original name of TeachBeyond before the organization shifted to focus on education around the globe in 2009.
Let's go over to the conversation with Anna and Clarence now. Clarence and Anna, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
Just as we get started, Clarence and Anna, I would love to hear about your parenting two teenage boys. What is something exciting about that? Something unexpected about two teenage boys? I just know that's a whole different life experience right now.
Coming from one dad of two younger boys, this is a
Yes,
only
that's
slightly
right.
personal
That's true.
question.
What do I have to look forward to?
So I would have probably, when my boys were your age, I would have been really nervous. I thought parenting teenage boys would be really, really hard, but it really is enjoyable because they're fun to hang out with. We can play games, we can do things together, and we can have really meaningful conversations. And of course, there are always at the times when I don't think we're going to have a meaningful conversation, and then all of a sudden something will come up and we can talk to them like other adults.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for myself, one thing that was surprising was just how quickly they didn't really need me anymore, because they are we've trained them and they are becoming more independent. So that would be a surprising thing, but it wasn't a gradual needing. It was like this year, all of a sudden, it's like, oh, they don't need me as much as I think they need me anymore. And that was one of the grieving stages I went through in the fall in the fall part of this past school year. Just like, okay, our relationship is changing now.
Yeah. There's so many different seasons in parenting and in life, and we're really excited to be able to talk with you about your experiences over a number of years in connection with Black Forest Academy, where you serve, and with TeachBeyond. And so, yeah, we're gonna go way back to start out, and we are looking forward to hearing about your personal experiences and how your family's grown, what you've learned over the years. So as we get started, can you just give us a quick overview of the timeline of your years with TeachBeyond and what that's looked like?
Yeah, so I'll start first. I first came to BFA in the early 2000s. I came with Jan's team back in 2003. And that was where my journey started with TeachBeyond. And BFA is where Anna and I met. She was in a girls' dorm across the street from my guys' dorm. She was in Blau and I was at Zona. And we both served as RAs in those dorms. And then Anna's third year, my second year, Anna taught high school math for 1 year when the Jan's building was being renovated. Then we left for 7 years. We call it our 7-year HMA. And then we came back in 2012 with two little boys in tow. And when we first came back, I served as the middle school chaplain for 6 years. And then for 4 years after that, I was the HR manager, and this is my second year now as the team lead here in Condon.
So for myself, as Clarence said, first I was an RA, and then I taught high school math. And then when we came back, our boys were little, so my primary role was at home for the first few years. And then as they got older, I stepped into the what do I want to do when I grow up phase of life, even though I was already 30-something. And so I just tried out some different things at the school. I worked in the library, and then I tried being an administrative assistant. And I discovered that was something that I really enjoyed, and did that in a few different roles, a few different branches of the school, but that's kind of where I've landed.
It's great to hear kind of the flow of all the things you've done. I'm so interested in how you got started. What got you interested in missions in the first place, of going overseas to serve? And obviously, this can be different for both of you. So I'd be curious to hear what that journey looked like, the initial call.
Yeah, so for me, it actually began with I went to Urbana back in 2000 and was I had a teaching degree, or I was getting a teaching degree, but I didn't really want to do teaching. But then discovering that there are other support roles needed, particularly at missionary kids schools, what really sparked that interest. And then ultimately, it was word of mouth that a friend of mine told me about. Hey, you could go to BFA and they have this resident assistant position. And I just thought, that sounds like the most amazing thing ever. So that was what brought me here. Every dorm at BFA has dorm parents and then also usually two RAs. And then you work together as a team to take care of the dorm. And, that involves logistics like cooking and driving, and obviously the emotional care and all of that, making sure the students are being well loved while they're here.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. I didn't grow up in a church. Didn't really know about missions until I was in high school. But my what got me interested more in missions was the travel aspect of like visiting and discovering new countries, new worlds, new people. And then when I was in college, Jan's team came through for a missions conference, and my eyes were opened to combining youth ministry, which is what I really wanted to do. Youth ministry and discipleship and missions going together. I hadn't even thought that had gone together. And so that's what drew me over to BFA, where I could be living life with these. I had 27 guys in my dorm, and just learning about living life with them, being able to disciple and encourage them in their walk. So
As you look back on that phase, before the 7 years that you were away from Black Forest Academy, what's something from that period of time that you still refer back to, look back to, that you feel like really impacted you for the long term?
as a resident assistant, because we were living life on life, um, what impacted me to stay was more kind of like, at first when I came, it was a sure, why not? This would be fun. I'm going to Europe. I get to travel, do youth ministry. But I would say there was one instance where it really became more of a yes, and it was on a Sunday afternoon. I was pretty tired, and a bunch of guys came up and asked, "Hey, can you drive us down to go play soccer with this other guy's dorm?" And I really didn't want to. I wanted to just rest, kind of stay at home. But I said okay, and I drove down there, and probably about 5 minutes into playing and just being on the field, it really opened up to me that yes, this is what God wants me to do, and to continue building into missionary families and missionary kids, as like, that ignited that passion, that heart of wanting to serve kids who are living cross-cultural lives, I guess, because I had a cross-cultural upbringing as a son of immigrant parents. I we At home we were very much like living in Chinese traditions and learning about Chinese traditions. Um, my mom was learning Canadian customs, learning how to cook like Western food and stuff.
Mhm.
But I went to school with primarily non-Chinese people,
Mhm.
um, and like very various different cultures mixing at school, but we were all Canadian or Western, I guess. And so I found myself growing up and at times kind of fighting both things, and wanting to be more Canadian than I was Chinese. I was actually ashamed of being different and didn't really want to be different growing up. And it wasn't until my mid 20s that I finally accepted that I am Chinese and that's part of who I am as my DNA. Even when we left here, we went and served at a Chinese church where the parents were of like basically immigrants that had come over, and their children were growing up just as I was growing up in a cultural context. And so that's what helped me kind of be grow into this and follow what God was leading me to.
Having just that story, that moment that you can go back to and remember, that seems like a really poignant memory for you, Clarence, even though that was a number of years ago. And to realize that kind of that has impacted you and your perspective on how you do ministry. Okay, so we can't leave this part of your story without asking how the two of you met and what kind of led to the next steps from that. So fill us in.
So we met because we were both serving at the dorms. At the time, the dorms were decentralized. So our two dorms were the farthest away, but they were close to each other. So we had a lot of just interaction. It was just
Hmm.
a very naturally developing friendship, and um, started dating and very shortly after got engaged because it was just obvious, like we're in this we're in this for the long haul.
So was it kind of obvious for you guys that once you got married that the next step was to return? Was that kind of next step to leave Germany pretty obvious for you?
Yeah, it was pretty obvious that we wouldn't start life here, but at the same time, we didn't like. Anna said yes, even though I had no idea where am I gonna provide for her, where are we gonna live. We had no idea. We just knew we were gonna get married in Ohio, and that was it. Um, and so yeah, it was kind of like we know that being at BFA probably is not the best for us right now, but where we were going next is just trying to find a job in a
Hmm.
church, because
Hmm.
that's where I felt like God was leading myself next.
Hmm.
That makes a lot of sense to kind of take some time away as you're married to kind of establish your marriage. But then I'm so interested in you coming back. We talk to people, even you, as you go for the first time. No one fully knows what they're signing up for. But you obviously knew exactly where you were coming back to. So I'm curious, what led you to say, yes, let's go back 7 years later? What was the thing that was pulling you back to Germany?
We always knew that we wanted to come back at some point. We had thought, when our oldest was going into maybe first grade, we always thought we would come back. We just didn't think that would be so soon. So back in 2011, we're asked to consider being temporary dorm parents. And that led to us thinking, oh, maybe now is the time to apply. Turns out they didn't need us as temporary dorm parents, but there was other needs. We still did apply to be dorm parents because they did need dorm parents for the following school year. But that's not what God had in store for us. He had more of a place that was a passion of mine, and that was with middle schoolers. And that's really, God wove it that way. In December 2011, we were asked to consider the role of middle school chaplain. And then February, we started raising support. February 2012, started raising support and arrived in August 2012. And we've been here ever since.
That's awesome that you always kind of had that in your plans and the call came and you responded. But
Mm-hmm.
as you went the second time, obviously life looked a lot different. So what was different this time around? You weren't a single person just worried about yourself. Now you had a family with kids that you had to worry about. So what did that look like for you?
So yeah, coming with young kids obviously was a very big transition. One thing that was really good is we had been working at this church in Toronto for 7 years, and so it was a Chinese church, an English speaking congregation at a Chinese church in Toronto. So that actually really developed a lot of just really useful ministry knowledge and experience for coming here and working with TCKs of, just a different kind of a background, but like surprisingly a lot of overlap there. Um, initially I think I was adjusting to not having a role at the school. I mean, that was my choice, and I was very happy to do that. But it was just different being here, and I wanted to be doing all the things, and it just wasn't the time for that quite yet, and that was fine. Moving a family, of course, had a few is it's just got a lot of layers, and one of our kids did have a really hard adjustment that first year, and it just blindsided us. He was so young. We just thought he'll be fine. We'll just bring him and he'll be fine. And he just wasn't. He had a lot of emotional struggles. I mean, he was little, so he's just tantruming all the time. And he also really had a lot of ongoing medical issues for several years. And so, and now we've moved past that, and he's doing fantastic in all areas of life. But that was, that was just a challenge that we had absolutely not anticipated. And we're very thankful for a good community here. So,
Yeah, and it would have been hard if Anna was had an official role with the school or anything like that. Like,
yeah,
I was
absolutely.
really glad that we could have that time where she could help our family get established before she stepped into anything overly just taking over her time, basically.
Anna, what would you say to the mom who is in the midst of like, I want to be involved in a more formal ministry? And even maybe in the past, I did do that, like you had been an RA, but is their primary focus is in parenting as they're making the transition into missions. I'm just curious what you would say to someone in that position.
I would say it's because I'm on the other side of it now. So it's so easy to look back and say, it's just a phase. Not, I shouldn't say it's just a phase, but it is a phase, and your time will come. But at the same time, like, don't be afraid to talk to your spouse and talk to those around you and figure out, okay, what are things that I can do? What are ways that I can be involved, and figure out creative ways to make that happen. And
Mm-hmm.
again, just lean into that. Your kids will not be young forever.
Mm-hmm.
And, now I can see, like, wow, that went so fast. But of course, when you're in it, it's not easy. And everyone tells you it's going to go fast, and you don't think it will.
One thing I will say is that what really helped, I think, too, was like Heather, you and the other teachers at the middle school were willing to include Anna into your activities. That just didn't really, they weren't activities that would lean naturally for me to join into, but rather for Anna to be part of. So I think the team there really helped with that. And so I would say
That's true.
if there's spouses that can help them feel part of this school by allowing to them to be part of some of the team things you're a part of, that would be really great.
That's true. I will say there were a lot of other young moms in a very similar life stage as me, and those women are super vital to my story. But also, having friends that were not young moms is so valuable, and just remembering that there's life outside of this current parenting stage, and other people want to be your friends. Don't be afraid to get to know people outside of what might feel like your natural circle.
Well, you've both held a number of different roles. And Anna, you mentioned that you tried some different things as you were moving back into working more formally at the school. And Clarence, you've had a chaplain and Bible teaching role. You've been in HR, you've been team leader. So many different positions. And so we could probably ask this for every single change that you've had. But how did you know? The big question is, how did you know it was time to change roles? And are there themes and threads that you're seeing kind of between all the roles that you've played? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, knowing that saying yes to missions or saying yes to serving in a school overseas isn't a one-time yes. It's always a continual reflection on, okay, what does this look like in this season in using my gifts in a new way? So what does that look like for you too?
Yeah. Knowing when to change roles. I never like sought after a new role. I just, most of the time, it's just, I got to a point of restlessness and my passions were changing, or I was seeing different needs that I could, that suited my gifting. And I needed new challenges and things like that. So I've never really sought after things. It's kind of like okay, I'm doing really well here. Um, but I think like I could almost do this role in my sleep now. I need a new challenge. And it's really good to be able to change things up like that, while still serving in the same place, still meeting the needs, still serving missionary families. I mean, I think our primary call is to serve missionary families, and however that looked was going to be, either as a middle school chaplain. um, Being a middle school chaplain, I wasn't just a chaplain, but I was also a Bible teacher. But I also taught computer skills. I had to be the IT liaison in that time as well. And but it was all for empowering missionary families to serve both here and abroad. And so, yeah, just that's really when I knew it was time to change. Was I'm restless. I need a new challenge. And God brings a new opportunity, and I just said yes. Like, I mean, it's a drastic change to go from the middle school chaplain to the HR manager. That's not a natural change for a lot of people. I've taken all these spiritual gifts tests, and pastoring, shepherding has always been a theme, an underlying theme. My heart is for people. My heart is for people to love each other and to love God. And so being an RA, that was helping to develop our students and those boys into knowing, how do you love one another, living together. And then as a middle school chaplain, I felt like I was like a shepherd to the entire, not just the students, but to the staff that I was working with at the school, in the middle school, and then as an HR manager, and then as a team lead. Similar things. Just how can we come alongside of people and guide them and help them thrive. So yeah, that thread's been in there the whole time in all these positions.
What about you, Anna?
So for myself, something that I realized about my own giftings, just kind of as I've tried out different roles in the past 5 or 10 years, being a missionary, it feels like everyone's supposed to be really good at pastoral ministry, like my husband is. And I finally came to a place of realizing, of course, I love people. Of course, that is always the ultimate goal, is to help people learn more about Jesus. But my gifting is more behind the scenes. I'm good at organizing things, and that actually brings me energy. And it's been a funny process. Like, now I can look at it and say, obviously, that's how God's gifted me. But it took me a while to be able to verbalize that and to embrace that, and realize that it's actually a really important need. So
Mhm.
I just want to say that as an encouragement for other people. Like, don't be afraid to
Mhm.
just lean into your giftings, even if it's not
Mhm.
maybe what we think traditional missionary giftings are supposed to be, or
Mhm.
that's what I had thought of for myself, I guess.
Or even what people might assume with Teach Beyond. You both have taught at different points in time with Teach
Right.
Beyond, but
That too. I
most
have a
of your
teaching
years.
degree.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not good at teaching. So that is also
Mhm.
an interesting piece. I have a teaching degree, but I don't want to be a teacher. We work at a school, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But actually, I'm great at doing other things. And I've discovered things that are really exhausting for other people are easy for
Mhm.
me. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
I didn't know this was hard for you. I can do that for you. I can help you with
Yes.
that. That's
Yes.
so easy for me. Like,
Yes.
oh, I had no idea.
Wholeheartedly agree.
It is the idea of it being good and natural and gives you energy to organize things is such a gift. And it is sad that people don't realize it because we need those people. As you've talked about kind of where you're at now versus where you started, I would love to know if there's something you'd want to go back and tell your past self with the perspective you have now.
I would say for myself is like, you are capable of doing the hard things. Don't shy away from those things. I always thought of myself as just wanting to take the safe way out, but since coming on the mission field, there's a lot of things that I've discovered about myself that I actually do take a lot of risks. Um, but also just a greater dependence on God has been something that I've developed while being on the field. I would say just a higher dependence on who he is and who he is in my life and who he is in other people's lives.
I think for me would be what I just referenced about don't be afraid to lean into where your giftings really are. Don't try to make yourself into what some you think other people perceive is important.
And Anna, I really appreciate that, you expressed that you tried some things that were good fits, some things that weren't. And so it might even take some time to figure out what those giftings are, right? But to then
Yes,
lean
absolutely.
into it
Mm-hmm.
as you do discover that. I love that. It's been a number of years that you've served with Teach Beyond. You already expressed some of the challenges that you faced as you were coming back the second time. We know that there have probably been a lot of different challenges that have popped up over the course of that time. So, yeah, what do you believe helps lead to a healthy longevity in staying in missions?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've found that has been really helpful in our staying is intentional time away from the project. So it's a more fancy way of saying taking vacations and making time to take rest and do fun things. But intentionally stepping away from the project and getting out of the surroundings here allows you to gain more perspective. I'm not saying that going to a conference or things like that, stepping away, but actually, putting your putting your time away, notification on your email, not answering phone calls, things like that. That's been the one thing I think that has helped sustain us on the field. Anything else?
Yeah, and another thing that's just really helped our longevity is there's a really strong community here, and that has helped us a lot. And especially as our boys are getting older, I see um, people that genuinely care about them.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially our oldest is in high school. He has teachers that he's close to and a small group leader. And that absolutely helps our longevity as a family, knowing that there are so many amazing people that are caring for our kids alongside of us.
And it doesn't, or it helps to have a working knowledge of the language. That's helped us to stay longer as well. I think, yes, our ministry is primarily in English, but being able to go to the grocery store and have even just a brief like interaction with the cashier or one of the people around you, or even just seeing like little kids and being able to use like your toddler German is okay. But I think that would also go a long way in making some intentional moves to understand the language and the culture, to have a working knowledge of it. Like, I'm not saying be fluent. Obviously, being fluent allows for so many more doors to open, but to have at least a working level where you could uh, make your own appointments, also order food or things like that, does help for longevity as well.
You're not like claiming to be fluent in German, Clarence, but
No.
you're solid on the Duolingo streak, is what I understand. So
Yeah.
that's what we're
But even
talking about.
just like, yeah, even just being able to sharing those small little victories with people when they're like, "Yeah, I made my own doctor's appointment." It's like, great.
Hmm.
At
Right,
least you can
right.
make yourself be understood and you can
Hmm.
understand a little bit. Does go a long way in helping you stay
Right.
engaged where you are on the field.
As you think back over all these years of serving in Germany, can you share a story of something that stands out that really helps to inspire or fuel your work today?
Yeah. So at the height of the refugee crisis, where people were leaving Syria and everything, and Germany had opened its doors to the refugees coming in, we had a number of missionaries that had to come off the field in those areas, but then they chose to be relocated here in Germany because they would be able to continue their ministry while their children had a good education or a place for education. And One of those families came and they were serving in an Arabic speaking country, and they started the school, and then as the refugees came in, they were able to start continuing they could continue their ministry, knowing that their children were able to continue getting a good quality Christian education. And so they didn't actually have to leave the field. They were able to continue ministering to the people that they were called to. And we're also continuing to see that as well. We've had, as refugees have come in, as other cultures have come in, there have been many families that have been added into this BFA Conjuring community because they couldn't continue where they were, but they were able to follow their ministry to here, because knowing that their children were still going to have the opportunity to get a quality Christian education at BFA. And then, you know, as the team lead, I can continue caring for those teachers who are investing, those teachers and the staff who are investing into these families. And so, again, it just continues building upon each other of just how God knits this community together to continue his work over time. And we get to see it time and time again. And it's just a huge privilege to be able to serve the kingdom in this way.
It's incredible the individual stories everyone has who's part of that community and how they ended up there, and then who they're serving is just so varied and different. And the way God has called them to serve there is amazing. Thank you, Clarence and Anna, for joining us and sharing with us kind of the journey that God has taken you. It is so encouraging. Before we let you go, we have one final question we always ask our guests, and that's, what is one thing that's changing your life right now this week? And it could be something really big or something small, just something that's making a difference in your life. So I'll go first, and then Heather, so you have a little bit of time to think about it. But the thing that's changing my life is kind of small. And we recently put in some motion sensor lights in our house, in like closets and things. And they're really kind of fun. So you walk into the room, and instead of having to flip the switch, the light just turns on. So obviously very small,
House
but
of the future over there.
yeah, it's really,
It's like
That's
magic.
amazing. Yeah.
it is very much like magic. It's great. So it's a small thing, but it is kind of a fun addition to the house. So that's changing my life.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
can imagine your boys have a lot of fun with that.
Oh, for sure. They're very confused also by when they happen to turn off on their own.
But you don't have to tell them to turn off the light. We still have
Exactly.
that.
You still have that
Yeah.
issue in
House of the future.
teenagers. Oh man. I think what's changing my life this week is that one of my friends, the friend I mentioned that moved to my neighborhood recently, if you've been listening, you know I mentioned that a few episodes ago. We started having hobby nights at her house. And so on Mondays, she opens the door for an hour and a half or so for people to bring their hobbies. And you have to be quiet for your hobby, but you can put in headphones if you want. But there were people knitting and reading and writing and trip planning and doing postcards. And so it was just fun to be in the same place and to have that kind of dedicated time to pour into just something that's fun and isn't productive, which is a good break. So yeah, that's what's changing my life lately. What about you guys, Clarence and Anna?
What's been changing my life lately has been coaching our middle school girls basketball team. I started with some girls who had never played basketball before, and
Mhm.
they know how to dribble, they know how to pass, they know how to shoot from PE class, but just to watch the growth in them has been a lot of
Yeah.
fun, and just having a lot of fun learning with them, learning to be a coach, how to coach girls. It's not easy, but it's lots of fun.
For myself, I have been reading a book. So I have a plug for a book. It's called The Emotional Life of Teenagers by Lisa DeMoore, and it's fantastic. Highly recommend it. Even if you don't have teenagers, still good.
Yeah, that's great. Great. So many different answers for that this week, and all great things to be changing our lives in different ways. So thanks for sharing. And thanks so much for joining us for this conversation, both of you. We appreciate the work that you're doing and also your willingness to share your story. And so thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk to friends again.
Anna mentioned that she serves as an administrative assistant. Maybe you didn't know that administrative assistants are needed in missions.
This makes such a big difference for keeping things organized and moving forward.
That is so true. For our weekly spotlight, we're focusing on administrative assistant positions. To see the current admin assistant openings, visit teachbeyond.org/go or click on the link in the show notes.
Clarence, Anna, Heather, and I all serve with an organization called TeachBeyond. Education plays a big role in missions, and TeachBeyond is a part of that. As followers of Jesus, TeachBeyond is a global community providing transformational education services as part of God's ongoing mission to transform individuals and communities into all He intends.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about TeachBeyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share this show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week.
The mystery word for this week is reflecting.